Hello, everyone. Welcome again. My name is Janet Sibanda, here with the Mwanangu Mtanami Family Podcast, bringing you more important insights about our favorite subject matter, pregnancy and parenting. This week, we'll be showcasing Vongai Munatsi. She's a clinical psychologist here in Harare, and she's going to walk us through some issues. I'll let her introduce herself and then get right into our topic of discussion today, which is basically looking at the issue of names. So, Vongai, welcome. How are you?
Hi, Janet. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. Thank you so much for coming. Please, may you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
I'm glad we are finally getting a chance to do this. As you've already said, my name is Vongai Munatsi. I am a clinical psychologist, 12 years in practice now. I work from Harare. I'm based in Harare. I work with children and families. I've got a very special interest in working with children. I think that there's a lot in terms of parenting that we are never taught, and I always kind of talk about how if you're building a house and kind of make a mistake, with the plan, or the builders make a mistake with the plan and following the plan, they can kind of just, break down the wall and, go in the direction that they are meant to go. But with parenting, unfortunately, when we start building in a particular way and we make certain foundations in our children, those foundations can't be shifted and changed, and we sort of in the long run reap foundations that we would have sort of laid. So I think children are very important. They are our future, and they're the future of a nation and a society. And how we raise them is actually quite important. And so I have a very special interest in working in this area, and I do parenting classes, just to help parents raise their children well and raise them right, so that we have, good adults and that have a bright future, which I think is what, every parent sort of wants for their child. So I'm really happy to be on the podcast today, talking, about names and talking about sticks and stones, and how, they I say to not break our bones, but they do leave a lasting impact, and they do make, a lot of damage that we then see a lot in adulthood.
Yes, and I'm so glad about the analogy that you gave about building a house, because the foundation here is most important, right? And so to give our listeners a bit of context,
Yeah.
Sticks and Stones is an article that I wrote where I was sharing what I went through growing up, and it was basically about the nicknames that I had been given, and some of them came from family, some of them came from other kids I went to school with, and they did a lot, to beat down my self-esteem. And at some point I was bullied, and I felt like I was entitled to this because I was already worth nothing, so there was nothing to protect. But there was a turning point, and I am what I am now. At least they didn't break my bones and they didn't break my spirit. But Vongai is going to take us through her insights as a professional who works with children and families as to what it really means when you give labels, and what it means to the children themselves when it comes from the people that they're meant to be trusting and having security in. So we'll get right into our discussion. First of all, Vongai, I will ask, what are your thoughts and reflections about my article, Sticks and Stones?
So, I think, it's a brilliant article that, talks about very important things that we talk about as psychologists, in terms of taking care of children and raising children. And in reflecting, to your article, I think the first thing that I would want to say is that, parents and families, particularly parents, are, a child's first relationship. So if you think about it, the first thing that we have to understand, as parents, is that we predispose our children to, mental health illness or mental health challenges,
Mm.
right from the womb. A lot of the times people think that, children don't remember. Things happen to them when they are really small or when they are young. But, that's actually the first 5 years of a person's life are their foundational years.
Mm.
So we found that a lot of things around depression and even anxiety or fear, a lot of it comes from the womb. And we've found that, through research and psychology, that there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of aggression, there's a lot of mom is just, when she was anxious, quite a lot of fearful or facing trauma, she can actually pass on stress through to her child in utero whilst the child is in the womb.
Oh.
And there are memories that are sort of laid down in our children's minds before they were even born. So if all the time mom is fearful, all the time mom is anxious, she's passing on stress hormones to the baby whilst the baby's in the womb, you teach or train the baby's mind before the baby is even born that the world is dangerous. And you
Mm.
find that your child will have memories or become fearful or anxious later on as they grow up, because whilst they were in the womb, or you were predisposing them and you were teaching them that the world is not safe. And a lot of the time they will have what we call in psychology a nameless dread. They are afraid, but they don't know why they are afraid. This is how you find as adults. Sometimes you get anxious or you become quite fearful when you hear certain sounds, or there are noises, or when people are shouting and things like that, and you just don't know why you're overcome by such fear. It's because there are memories that are in your mind that are laid down before you even had language. So the
Mm.
first thing that we have to understand as parents is that, you're your child's first relationship, and their experience of the world or what the world is like comes from you. So all of those things around, your child's value, how important they are, their worth, all of that. This means that if a parent is absent all around, or they are treating their child like not a priority, or they are saying things that are hurtful and that are breaking down the child's spirit, what they learn, in those foundational years is that they're not important, they're not valuable, they're not good enough. All of that is are things that are infused in a child in the first 5 years of their lives. So when I read Sticks and Stones,
Mm.
it brought out that concept right from the beginning to say, home is an important place, because that is the foundation or the building blocks of what the person will be like. So the way that I would like you to then look at this and think about this is to say, when we are born, we are, in psychology, we call it tabula rasa. We are like a blank slate
Oh yeah.
that experience writes upon. So our children are born blank slates. And
Mm.
then experiences that we have with them, and who they are, what they can do, what they cannot do, how good they are, how worthy they are, how valuable they are, or how they lack value. So it's in the
Yeah.
things we say, it's in the way we treat them, it's in the way we take care of them, and it's in the way that we hold them that children start to learn if they're a priority, if they're important, if they're valuable, or if they're not. And so this is where labels and names, because we are actually telling them who they are. When we
Mm-hmm.
say you are ugly, when you say you are dark, when we say tanda thighs, when we say tambarafuta, and all those kind of things, we are giving our children identity, and we are saying this is who you are. And they look to us, because we are the people that they trust, we're the
Mm.
people that they believe, know, and understand who they are. They look to us as, the people that are giving them the foundational, information and truth about who they are. And so they hold on to our words very dearly, and our words then become very important, and also how we treat them also becomes very important. So Sticks and Stones was very insightful, and it was right on the money in terms of talking about the importance of labels and names, and also how they then impact on the development of an identity, self-worth, and self-esteem, and then how our children then go into the world and represent themselves in the world.
Okay. Oh, wow. That's quite interesting. There I was thinking I was just sharing a story to say, hey, guys, be careful when you say what you say to your children. So my next question was going to be, was I being overly sensitive? And then,
Yeah.
from what you just said, I think it suffices to say that, no, I was well within my rights as a person to say that, this was not a good.
No. You were not being overly sensitive, and neither were you, making a mountain out of a molehill.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I'm vindicated. My next question
Mm.
to you, Ongai, is to what extent have you encountered people who have been affected by these foundational year traumas, and how exactly do they present? When you're now grown or you're an adult or whatever, how then does it show that there were certain things you went through in your childhood?
Okay. So I think the vast majority of people, Janet, who come in with psychological challenges or mental health problems have had significant trauma in childhood. And depending on the severity of the trauma, the signs and symptoms will sort of mirror or will speak to that kind of trauma. But what we are talking about, because I mean there are various levels of trauma, things around physical abuse, sexual abuse,
Mm-hmm.
verbal abuse, and emotional abuse, will present differently in adulthood. And if you are talking about things like this, labels, names, they come under emotional and verbal abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times they come to attack a person's self, identity is the first thing that's affected.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times what you then have is conditions that are about the self.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in Sticks and Stones, we're talking about, not being able to accept yourself, because remember what I said, around your parents being the people that teach you that you're a good person, that you're acceptable, that you are lovable.
Yeah.
And therefore that frames your identity and also your personality. So when people say and are constantly criticizing you and are constantly saying you don't look good enough, what you have done is not good enough, your body has got certain things that will make you not be appreciated or liked, and you're constantly being compared with those that have features that are said to be beautiful and all of these kind of things, what happens is you develop shame about yourself.
Mm.
And you also develop disorders, around the self. And these are the most difficult kind of conditions to sort of deal with, because it's easier for a person to deal with something that's outside of themselves. If I think that, I have got an attachment to myself, I can cut off the attachment.
Yeah.
But if there's something wrong with me, the self, it's very difficult to do with myself except kill myself, because that's how I get rid of the flaw within the self,
Yeah.
And so you find that a lot of the times when, people that have been labeled and have had problems with that tend to have low confidence, they tend to have low self-esteem, they have no value, and they usually treat themselves in that particular way. So a lot of them are very self-sabotaging in adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't value themselves, they put themselves in situations that are dangerous to themselves. And a lot of the times you find in relationship, a lot of the times in relating, you find, women that have been abused or men that have been abused as they're growing up, they tend to find spouses that are also abusive to them because they don't see the value in themselves. Much
Subconscious.
like you were allowing that, yes. So, so it's subconscious, much like you were allowing, that,
Bullying.
that bully
Mm.
you were saying to yourself, I deserve to be treated like this, I deserve to be bullied, I deserve to be treated like I'm a second class citizen, a second class human being, because I don't measure up and I'm not good enough. So they have a right to mock me, to laugh at me, to point out those flaws or those things that don't look so good on me. And so when you lack that confidence, you tend to then not go for opportunities because you think you're not good enough, not
Mm-hmm.
allow people to treat you like you're not good enough. They can cheat on you, you'll still stay. They can beat you up, you'll still stay.
Mm.
You'll have the raw end of the deal and you will still stay. And I've seen a lot of that whether it be in work, whether it be in relationships, and people get married to people like that because in the first place, the first relationship with their parents and with their families, they were told that they were not valuable. So a lot of the times they think people are doing them a favor by loving them, by wanting to be friends, rather than that they have got something valuable to contribute.
Yeah.
And so in the long run, they are depressed, they are anxious a lot, they use substances to cope, they are, attention seeking, they self-harm and self-sabotage. And these are a lot of conditions that you then see in adulthood because there was that neglect and that trauma that happened in childhood.
My goodness, this is also profound, and it's got me thinking. Do you know, like when we're cooking, like let's say you've got potatoes, right? And you want to use the potatoes in your food. If there are any bad parts, you cut them off and you throw them away because they're bad parts. We don't want to eat those. At some point I got to that sense of feeling that, what, it was almost subconscious. Oh, okay, no, this is a bad part. Let me cut it off. And I literally could envision myself doing it until I snapped out of it. And then I realized, hang on, you don't just cut off body parts, and get rid of the bad parts. That sort of thing. So when you're saying that, it's making a lot of sense to me, but because I'm all about solutions, right? I'll ask you this question. Is there a way to recover? How do you rewrite the foundation? Or how do you rebuild the foundation?
Okay. So I think it's very important. We hear quite a lot, about self-awareness. Because what enabled you, Janet, to snap out of it was a sense of self-awareness. Okay. And I would like to explain it like this so that I hope that people can get it and they can understand it. We right now we are, we're in the technology age and we are having this conversation, very far from each other, using an application or an app, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of us in this day and age, we've got smartphones and smartphones run on apps, right?
Yeah.
Apps have got programs, right? And programs are codes that are written by programmers.
Yeah.
The layman, you and me, don't really care about the program, right? We want to just use the application to do what we wanted to do. So for example, when WhatsApp began, WhatsApp was just for sending messages. We couldn't delete messages. We couldn't take pictures. We couldn't send documents over WhatsApp.
Yeah.
But the programmer sort of then rewrote the code in such a way that we would be able to do, those kind of things. So I want you to think about your foundational years like this. You were born and you didn't have a program. And then your parents in the first 5 years of your life wrote a program or a code by which you live your life. But you don't see this code, just like you and me don't see the code for WhatsApp because we are not programmers. And even if we did see it, we wouldn't even know what it meant. But that code is like the hidden hand that's making WhatsApp function. Okay. So you and me have got a code. We've got a template, we've got a program. That program was written by our parents from the time that we were between 0 and 5. So today you've made lots of decisions, Janet. You've decided what you're going to eat. You've decided that you can't go out of the house naked. You have to wear clothes. And even those clothes you've decided, the ones that were too tight and just the ones that would make you uncomfortable or you would think people would not appreciate you in, or, all of these kind of things. And these are things that we do subconsciously.
Yeah.
Even the person that we are attracted to, the work that we like to do, our character, our personality, things like that. All of those things are things that we do unconsciously or subconsciously. We don't have to think about them. Why? Because the program, just like, like WhatsApp, from the click of a button, there are many things that are happening and we don't have to worry about how they're happening, right? We just have to see what we want, which is delete a message, send a picture, whatever. We are doing that and the program is doing that, and the program is like a hidden hand and that's making decisions and choices for us. So if in our program, right, through the way that we've been treated, through the way that we've been handled, through the way that our parents raised us, the program has been programmed to say we are not valuable, we are useless, we are this, we are that, right?
Yeah.
We sometimes then cannot tell that that's how we feel about ourselves. So what happens is that we get into situations and we automatically make choices and we think these are our choices.
But
We
it's
automatically agree with what a bully is doing or saying. We automatically, fight for a relationship, even if that relationship is hurtful to us. We automatically say we can't, do something because we've been told for so long that we are not good enough and that we can't do it. So now it's not a conscious thing. It's like we are on autopilot and it's like we are asleep whilst we are awake. So the first thing, that's important for us to do is to actually recognize what's in our program and what's in our template. And how we recognize what's in our program and what's in our template is through repetition.
Okay.
What are the things in adulthood that we continuously repeat? So if it's dating, are we continuing to date people that, dump us or that treat us badly or that beat us up or that constantly shouting at us, that are constantly bringing us down? If it's friendships, are we the ones who are always looking for our friends? They never look for us. They are never appreciative. We buy them birthday gifts and they don't buy us anything. Are we the one who's constantly reaching out to everybody else and sending them messages, but they never look for us? Are we the ones who are constantly paying when everybody else goes out, but they actually never pay for anything?
Yeah.
Are we the ones who are, these repetitions in our lives, in different areas of our lives, alert us and tell us that there is a problem within our programming?
Yeah.
So even if it's with raising our children, are we constantly in a certain fight with our kids? Are our kids constantly doing the same things? Are we constantly seeing a pattern, that we sort of can't break within our children or within our interaction with our spouses and within our children? That repetition then alerts us to the fact that there is a problem within the program. So if you think about it, Janet, that girl wasn't the first person who bullied you. You were probably bullied all your life, and you then ended up feeling like there was something wrong with you because everywhere you went, you were being bullied. It's the same thing with rejection. It's like the last boyfriend rejected me, my family rejected me, my friends reject me. In intimate relationships, I'm rejected. There's always a pattern of rejection. That pattern of rejection, that repetition is what tells you that there's something within the program. The way you are acting towards the world or the things you are choosing based on your program are creating the same sort of result. So when people say the repetition of the same thing, thinking it will yield different results, is not wisdom. But a lot of the times, because we are on autopilot, we don't actually realize that we are doing the same thing over and over and over again. Like in your article, you were bullied at home, you went to school, you were bullied, and your response to that bullying was the same.
Yeah.
And that response of accepting the bullying, right, was like agreeing that, yes, I'm not worthwhile. Yes, I'm not valuable. Yes, you are entitled to say what you're saying. Yes, you're entitled to doing what you're doing. I accept it. You are right. The day you did something different, you stopped the repetition and you said, no, I am valuable. You have no right to speak to me this way. You have no right to act in this way towards me. The bullying stopped. And when that stopped, what did you do? You rewrote the program.
Hey, yes, I did.
and you changed the template. So firstly, you had to be aware. Then secondly, noticed the repetition. Thirdly, you changed the way you responded to the repetition. And then you changed the program.
Okay, profound. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. And, like, as you were talking, I was reflecting. You said that was not the first time it happened. And I in my mom's house, I am like the last born, and I have two elder brothers, So that in itself was like a recipe for disaster. Every time people got in trouble, I was the one who pacified everything. They sent me to go and appease everyone and everything, especially my dad. But one of the things that happened was, because I was the only girl, I was also the subject of a lot of attacks from my brothers, as we were growing up. And I could not defend myself because I was smaller and I was a girl, you know?
Yeah.
So each time I tried to stand up for myself, I would be suppressed. And also, you know, the old children are seen and not heard. You know, even if you've got something that you feel you've been wronged, you know, in our culture, we believe our parents can never do wrong. You know, so everything they do is acceptable and we must just grin and bear it. So, you know, when you look at those things, as I'm reflecting now, it makes sense that if I felt like my parents had done something that I wasn't okay with, I couldn't tell them no, you know? And if I did, I would be in trouble for talking back, right? And with my brothers, when they came at me, I couldn't say no. You know, I talked to my other brother and I always tell him, you know, I hated you as a child. You were like so evil and you were the worst person, you know? And he says, I'm glad you've grown, you know. So looking at it from that perspective, that's where I can tell within my journey that, there is a pattern, you know.
And that's actually the very important thing, because what we then do is, you have to understand this. You learn the template creates, or the program that is created between 0 to 5 is generalized to all your relationships. Because remember what I said, you're a blank slate. They teach you how to relate to them because they're your first relationship. And then they teach you how to relate to the world. And so you then get into the world, you know, feeling a certain way, acting a certain way, that then attracts that kind of treatment from others. And then you then see, like, you know, like, for example, we learn how to add in grade 1, and the basics of mathematics, the foundational principles of mathematics are learned then. We get to grade 5, the numbers become bigger, right? They are not 1 plus 1 is equals to 2. They are 555 plus 75 or something like that. What we are doing is, we're not relearning the principle of addition. We are just applying it and generalizing it to the huge numbers. We get to Form 1, the numbers become bigger. We get to up A level, the numbers are bigger, but the foundational principle hasn't changed. So what you were taught between 0 to 5 about yourself, and then also about the world and how the world relates to you and how it ought to treat you, is what you use when you go to kindergarten and to play with others. It's what you use when you go to grade 7. It's what you use in high school. It's what you use in dating and in university and anywhere else that you find yourself. You are just generalizing the concept. And which is why you find that you then have this continuous cycle of repetition in your life. And that repetition is what must alert you that there's something wrong with the program, and there's something wrong that was put in your foundational years that is making you prone to sort of attracting it again in your adulthood. And usually when we attract it again, or when we relive it in adulthood, what we are trying to do is, we are trying to fix the scars of childhood in adulthood. And what you did then when you faced that bully, you fixed a scar of childhood in adulthood. And sometimes what paralyzes us in adulthood is that when these scars happened, or these wounds happened, we were too young and we felt we didn't have power to deal with it. And then when we are older, we still feel that same disempowerment, because no one has taught us to deal with it, because we didn't have the power when we were children. And now we feel we don't have the power when we are adults. So it's actually quite important, like I was saying to you, for us to be able to notice that repetition, to say, I'm always in these situations. And because I'm always in these situations, it means there is something wrong with my program. And you then want to find out, where exactly in my program did I start feeling like I wasn't valuable? Did I start feeling like I wasn't good enough? Did I start feeling like, you know, people could treat me like this? And then we need to do the exact opposite of what we did then, which is accept it and tolerate it. And, you know, actually challenge it. Because when we challenge it, we reprogram ourselves, and we actually realize that what we are afraid of is not as scary as we thought it was.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. I'm so happy about this, and you know, it brings a lot of things to perspective. So now, I would then go on to ask. I think we are running out of our time. Does our personality, you know, they talk of people having different temperaments. They've got the sanguine, the melancholic, and all of those, right? Do these traumas have an impact on these temperaments, or the two are running parallel within your space, and but still affecting you both heavily directly?
Okay. So this thing, there are things that you're bringing into focus, the nature sort of debate. Okay.
Yeah.
There are things that we are born with, which is almost like like your temperament, right?
Mm-hmm.
um and then there are things that we acquire, that's nature, like your nature as in your biological sort of makeup. And then there's nature, which is your, how you're raised, how you're socialized, how you're taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And you find that we are born with those temperaments. And then if we are then in an environment that doesn't actually recognize and help us work with our temperament, we then can develop personality disorders,
Okay.
and which are fixed ways of acting and relating with others, that come as a result of trauma. So you find that people that have got very difficult personalities, usually have had these traumas in childhood, where they've been neglected, they haven't been taken care of well. They then find it very difficult to trust people. They then find it difficult to relate with people, and then they then have a very complicated structure or way of being as a result of the way that they were treated in childhood. So you'd hear people talk about borderline personality disorder, or histrionic personality disorder, or
Mm-hmm.
antisocial personality disorder, where people have no remorse. They can steal from you, they can kill you, they can rape or abuse you, and won't have any remorse about it. That's your antisocial personality disorder. And all of those people that people call psychopaths, sociopaths, and all of those kind of things, a
Okay.
lot of it is coming from the fact that those traumas that happened in childhood has then created a personality and a way of relating with the world that that is difficult and that is not great, because of those traumas and the way people were treated in childhood. So it's actually quite important, for parents, to really think about how they are, working and, and raising their children. And it's as simple as not just the labels and the words that we say, but it's, how you soothe your child when your child is crying.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you ignore them and you let them cry until they stop crying, or until they learn that their tears don't move you, or in that they are learning, if that's repeated long enough, they learn that they are not important enough, and that if they cry, no one is going to care about they are crying, or is going to care about what they need. And then they end up disavowing those needs and saying, I don't need them. But then in that, there's a difficult personality that then develops and grows. And it's those adults that will say to you, I don't need anybody, won't allow anybody close, won't show you any emotion or any feelings, even if they do feel them. And, because they're afraid of being in that position where they're going to be deprived and they're not going to be cared for. So
Yeah.
it then takes a very, a very, deep thing, as people grow and become older, because everything that we are doing in raising our children, has a very huge impact on who they become, and what they end up becoming, and what they end up doing with their lives.
Yeah, it's actually a huge task, and it's really very scary. Um,
Mm.
so it makes me think. I mean, I have said to my kids before that your tears don't move me. So I will repent of my sins.
You need to.
I think also it's you sometimes you can start to see patterns develop when kids cry a lot, and they know that it makes you act a certain way, and then at some point they start to manipulate that emotion within you. So I'm not always like that, but there's particular instances when you know that this person, they know their history and they know why they're in trouble. But you and I will have an aside about that one. So
Okay.
I think probably as we taper off, right? What do you say about self-love? Is it selfish? Like for someone to actually, as you talked about, self-awareness, for someone to be able to say to someone else, because I know our society doesn't allow us to stand up for ourselves. But what do you say about that in relation to the subject matter that we're discussing right now?
I think that a lot of self-love is the remedy to what we are talking about right now, because a lot of the times when we are told that there's something wrong with us, when we are told that we don't look good enough, or that we are not acceptable, being able to separate whatever it is that has made the other person feel that we are not acceptable, or what has made them treat us like we are not acceptable, is very important. Because if you think about a lot of the stuff that was happening to you, and in reading that article, Sticks and Stones, bullies usually are people that are troubled. And I usually say this: if you if you are bigger than me, you don't need to tell me that you're bigger than me. Everybody in the world can see that you're bigger than me. But if you
Exactly.
have to exert pressure, to show the world and to show me that you're bigger than me, then there's somebody that you're trying to convince. And I think usually you're trying to convince yourself,
Oh yeah.
because it's like, a iPhone and a 3310, the old Nokia 3310.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can tell which one is the better phone. But if an iPhone is standing on top of a mountain and saying I'm better than a 3310, it's not trying to convince the 3310 or the people around them. It's trying to convince itself. So
Mm.
when people are beating you down, they're not trying to convince you that you're smaller. They're trying to convince themselves that they're bigger, because
Mm.
in essence, they feel that they are smaller. So, in understanding that, we then have to realize that the things that are said about us, by people that say we are not good enough, are actually, things that the other person feels bad about themselves, and
Mm.
not the other way around. So they are not true. And therefore, we need to then actually start discounting the things that they are saying, and actually knowing that we are only attacked because we must have something that's
Yeah.
good enough, which is why they are attacking us. So that kind of self-love, that kind of self-acceptance, to say, there must have been something about those thighs. There must have been something about me, even in my chubbiness, that, caught your attention and
Mm-hmm.
made you attack it, because
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't good enough, you should have been, lifting me up, not trying to tear me down.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to tear me down, there must have been something wonderful about it, that you're trying to make yourself tall by making me feel small, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, so having that and understanding that, makes us then start accepting ourselves and making us love ourselves. And when we love ourselves, we will refuse to be treated like crap, and we will protect ourselves. But when we don't love ourselves, we won't protect ourselves.
That's true.
We will allow anybody to treat us in any way and anyhow, because we think we deserve it, because we don't actually like ourselves.
That's true. Before I ask you to give us your parting thoughts, it reminds me of be careful what you tolerate from other people,
Mm.
because you're telling them or teaching them how to treat you. So, with
Yeah.
that being said, what are your parting words in relation to Sticks and Stones?
It's I'm glad you did the article, and I'm also glad that we've had this chance and this opportunity to talk about it. There are lots of wounds that we have, that we carry around with us, or things that people have said, that have impacted on our lives, positively sometimes and negatively sometimes. And we need to be aware of our programming, and we need to be aware of the things that we're constantly repeating, and things that we say we don't like in ourselves, that sort of put us into trouble, or that don't, you know, allow us to shine, and to be the best, that we can be of ourselves. And we need to, be aware of ourselves, and
Mm-hmm.
think about that program, and think about what, has happened to us in childhood, and start thinking about ways of trying to shift and change those, so that we can be the best person that we can be.
Oh,
um,
I am so I don't know what to say. I love this conversation. I enjoyed it so much. More for myself because it was more healing, you know,
mm,
than I'm hoping our listeners also feel the same. But I'm so grateful to you for having had this discussion with us. And I know definitely we're gonna have more and more conversations. And I'm glad we started with this wonderful foot forward. So, Vongai,
um,
thank you so much for coming. And
thank you so much for having me.
yes, spending this amazing time with us. May God continue to enrich and bless the work that you do, because you are doing an amazing job. Thank you so much. And until next time.
Thanks, Janet.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.